Welcome. Don't adjust your dial. Welcome everyone to the Lofi Poli Sci podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pickering. That's right. Low fives and low fidelity, low quality, in your face, messy as can be global news show. It's Tuesday, Lo-Fi Nation, and you know what that means. It's time for Tuesday's top 10 list. But today, we're running a little different. That's right. After over a year and 300 episodes, we're branching out and bringing in someone special to talk to us about cinema. So no country level list for us today. I'm sure you're all crying out there. So without any further hesitation, I couldn't be happier to introduce all of you to one of our oldest and truest friends, Gregory Day, a writer, director, bookseller, and voice behind Hipsville AD, the blog that is a one-man fanatical sect of God of subcultures with fervent ramblings of all breed of cinematic pleasures. Gregory Day, my friend, how the hell are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on here.
Oh, thank you, sir, for coming on. And let me just say, before we even begin, I can't wait to jump into this list and get away from that global news bullshit we do every day. Like I said, I'm sure everyone's happy about it as well. So Gregory Day, would you do us the honor of telling everyone exactly what our top 10 list is and what does it all mean?
Oh, yeah, man. Today we're going to be talking about genre and exploitation movies. So I'm here with a top 10 genre and exploitation movie starter pack. What that means is we're going to be running down sort of these classic genre and exploitation movies for the greenhorns out there. These are flicks that are be like low budgets. They have very simple plots, but they feature a lot of like nudity and violence as selling points for audiences out there to get sort of these like grimy base level kind of films back from the 60s and 70s sort of. So what I'm going to be talking about is like how these pictures were made without powerful studios looking over the shoulders. And, as long as they showed some scan or showed some cars blowing up or whatever, they could get a lot of art in there. And they can kind of do whatever the fuck they wanted to do. And it's kind of like, real Wild West, real rock and roll kind of movies.
That's awesome. And I'll go ahead and say and tell everyone out there, I have not seen a single movie on this list, but Gregory Day was so kind enough to cut together trailers of all 10 of these. So I've had some bit of idea about what's going on in here, but I am really excited to talk about it more. All right, now that we're going to just jump on into it, Gregory Day, what's coming in at number 10?
Oh, yeah, man. Number 10 is A Bucket of Blood from 1959. I got to start this list off with the King of the Bees, Roger Corman. He is probably the most famous American director and producer of exploitation movies. And this one is one of my favorites. He shot it in 5 days. And it's a horror satire of the beatnik scene about a busboy that begins making sculptures of people he murders to find fame and fortune and to get the girl in his little like cafe scene. So it's full of laughs, full of frights, and it's got in his only leading role, it's got Dick Miller as he's one of the most famous faces in American cinema.
Oh man, this when I saw this trailer, this was such a beatnik film. Like I didn't even know the word beatnik was going to come in the trailer, but I was like, man, this is about a bunch of beatniks. I haven't seen anything like this in forever. Man, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, it's like it's basically like like if we talk about exploitation, it's basically making a movie about what's popular right now to exploit that. So a lot of black turtlenecks, a lot of berets, a lot of people doing like poetry on stage, but then it's like taking the piss out of all that and kind of making fun of that scene.
Yeah, I was waiting for people to start snapping. That was the only thing missing. All right, and coming in at number 9.
Oh, yeah, man. Number 9 is one of my favorite films of all time, Lady Snowblood. It's 1973 out of Japan. It's a revenge film, which is a huge theme in exploitation cinema because it's kind of a plot device you can use where character just goes person to person, so scene by scene, getting revenge on people that did them wrong. So, but this flick is starring the incredible Miko Kaji, who is out for revenge against people that killed her parents. And it's ultra violent and it's in beautiful color. It inspired Kill Bill, if you've seen that flick. Like the snow scene at the end of the first one is a straight ripoff out of this movie. But it's like pop art levels of like color and splashes of blood that just like kind of elevate this film out of being just a standard revenge film. It's just a gorgeous movie to look at.
This may be the only one of the films on the list that I'd actually heard of. And what I'd heard is that this is a classic and really one of the only, if not just a handful of female-led samurai films, right?
Yes, it is indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Coming up in at number 8.
Oh man, this one's a great one. Coffee, also from 1973, and another revenge film. But this one's stateside. It's in the blaxploitation genre. It's starring Pam Grier in the lead role. It's just a badass fucking movie. Like her going through all these different people who have that are participating in the drug racket that has hurt her sister, and so she's just killing everyone up the ladder until it gets into like politics and city planning, that sort of stuff. Starting to talk about some systemic issues in the Black community. But man, it's a wild ride, and it's just a great film to sit through.
Yeah, this trailer, when I watched it, it most certainly screamed 1970s film to me.
Yes, absolutely.
Which I know very little about, but it made me think of movies like Shaft, for instance. And yes. I was like, wow, this looks like another powerful female-led film from the 1970s.
Yeah, man. Like, yeah, thinking about blaxploitation, you can't make this list without blaxploitation. And Shaft was definitely like the big one. Like that's sort of kicked that whole cycle off. But I think Coffee is the pinnacle of it.
Excellent. All right, let's keep going. Number 7.
Yeah, man. Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward. I'm getting really weird here on this one because if you're going to talk about exploitation cinema, you got to talk about Italian movies. They were as a country, they were just the biggest exporter of exploitation movies, and they love ripping off other things and just constantly cranked out movies. But one of their subgenres is called the giallo, which is sort of a psychedelic, sexy murder mystery genre. It's very weird. You really gotta follow them because a lot of them don't make a lot of sense. A lot of them are dreamy, but this one's really great because it's a pulpy, murder mystery was full of twists and turns, but it's also kind of about exploring this woman's sexuality and like how the terror and the murders sort of turn her on, but they also repel her. So it's a really great flick, and that it explores a lot of deeper emotions than just a regular exploitation movie would.
And this one, I will go ahead and tell you, looked so crazy creepy to me, man. I was like, oh my God, I don't like psycho horror films. Oh, no. I get scared. I have nightmares. I was like, sorry, buddy, I will never watch this film. But you know what you're saying about the Italian genre coming out and doing something different. It's definitely important to talk about.
Yeah, this one, the Giallo Man is one of my favorite like subgenres. It's really like thrillers, but they kind of go in different directions. There's a lot of psychedelic ones where people are, there's a lot of like acid taking and a lot of like cults and stuff because they're very heavy on the early 70s, sort of hippie culture as well. But a lot of them do veer into like horror. So there's a lot of violence and murder and gore and things like that in those films. So they're a real trip to watch, and they're unlike anything you're ever going to see.
Yeah, the trailer definitely gave off that vibe to me. All right, on we go to number 6.
Oh yeah, man. We're sticking with Italy on this one, man. We're going to talk about the spaghetti western, which probably in America is most famous for like the good, bad, and the ugly. Clint Eastwood starring movies of the like the late 60s, mid 60s. And but today we're talking about Django. So if you're familiar with like Django Unchained, the Quentin Tarantino film, this is where it gets the name from. It's about a guy who comes into town, but he's got a coffin. He's dragging through the mud in his town, and he gets stuck between two warring factions. And I think just get tighter and tighter around him, and the audience is just like, what the hell is in this coffin? And then once we get to what's in the coffin, I'm not going to spoil it, but then it's just kind of mind blowing, big kind of crowd pleasing moment once we find out what's in there.
Yeah. Now this is the only other film on the list that I'd heard of the name, though. Like you said, I had never heard of this film. The name made me think of Tarantino film Django. Mm-hmm. So watching this trailer, I had no idea what was going on. And then I noticed that it was dubbed. And then I was like, really? I was like, and now you're telling me it's an Italian spaghetti western, Yeah. And I was like, really intrigued. What is in that coffin? For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. And just say one other thing is like the Italian films were kind of way ahead of the American films at the time. So like it is incredibly violent. There's like a guy for like 1966, there's a guy who gets his ear cut off in the movie, which is incredibly violent for that time. And then also it's like a movie that deals with like the KKK basically are like the bad guys, or like the Italian version of that in the film. So it's all about the two warring factions in the movie are all about race. So it's very intriguing to watch a movie made from another country exploring like American race problems.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's coming from another country and during that day and time in the era, for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, and now to our top 5, and coming in at number 5 is.
Oh man, okay. So if we're gonna talk exploitation cinema, genre cinema, we got to go deep down the rabbit hole of kung fu films, man. Everyone loves kung fu films. I don't know anyone who doesn't like kung fu films, but I could have gone with a more marquee name, but I wanted to talk about a film that's very special to me called Hapkido. It's from 1972 out of Hong Kong. It stars Angela Mao Ying and Sammo Hung, and it's got a very young Jackie Chan in the stunt crew. You could spot him on camera, but he's doing a lot of great stunts. Sammo Hung's only like 19 in the film, and so it makes Jackie like 16, 17 in the stunt crew. But it's a very basic story of like two rival martial arts crews who are getting into a fight. But what makes this movie stand out is how fierce the choreography is. Like it's just a badass fucking fight movie that feels like 10 years ahead of its time. Like you watch this movie, things are so fast and so furious in this film compared to watching anything else. Like it came out in 1972, which is like the year before Enter the Dragon came out, and the fight scenes are just phenomenal in this thing.
Well, for sure. All I'll add to this is that I do enjoy a good kung fu classic. So now I am excited to have something new to watch.
Yeah,
and by
man.
new to watch, I mean a 50-year-old film that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And coming in at number 4, where are we going?
Oh man, we're finally hitting the horror genre here, which is probably my favorite genre of all time as far as movies go. But this one is very special because it's called Basket Case. It's from 1982 here in the States, and it's sort of one of the first films, or at least on this list we're going to talk about, where it's like these sort of genre exploitation films inspired someone to make their own genre and exploitation film. A lot of these films are made by people who this is sort of the job that they had to make these films for a producer or a studio, or whatever, because they knew they could make money off of these sort of exploitation topics. But this is something coming from someone who just loves these kinds of films and made his own film. Director Frank Hinenlotter loves these films. He'd skip out of school and go see these kind of movies. Some of the seedy New York theaters downtown, Times Square and stuff. So he makes his own film, and it's about this. It's just a strange movie about this kid who shows up in New York, and he's got a basket, and everyone wants to know what's in the basket. And anyone who opens the basket gets gets torn to shreds by something that's in there. And so the whole mystery is kind of, what the hell's in there. But it's just like quintessential exploitation creature feature. It's a lot of fun. All the characters are so New York. It's just a blast to watch, man.
Yeah, earlier you had one that was the craziest trailer for me to watch, but this trailer was the creepiest one out of the bunch. I mean, even I don't want to know what the hell the dude had in the basket. I was like, no. All right, to number 3.
Oh man, yeah, we're going back to Roger Corman again here. This time as a producer. He produced a ton of fantastic films in the 70s. We're talking Rock and Roll High School from 1979. It's just one of the most funnest films you can ever see. It updates the old school Hollywood rock and roll movie for the late 70s. It's got the Ramones in it, and they treat the Ramones like they're the Beatles, which is insane because the Ramones were really not made to be in front of a camera and to be around a bunch of teenagers. They're just a bunch of New York guys trying to do their thing. And the film is like a live action cartoon. So over the course of the film, it's just gag after gag, visual humor, jokes coming at you a mile a minute. But it's also like a musical, so it stops every few minutes, and there's a Ramones song, and then the Ramones play a whole concert in the end of the movie. It all kind of leads to like one of those great high school movie endings where it's like a generational gap fight between the faculty and the students. And man, it's just a blast.
Yeah, this one reminded me so much of 80s film, like Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Clubs, things like that. And so many of the stars that were in this trailer, I mean, you see them in all kinds of other films, like The Karate Kid. And they actually had the Ramones. I was like, oh, I love me some good old school punk music. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. But this one, it's like if you get into it, it's very crude, and it's not as PC as we would say today, but it's very crude, and it's very much about sticking, the finger in the eye of like authority.
Yeah, you're absolutely right to say that about PC and old humor. Recently I've watched some old comedies from the 1980s, and a lot of the jokes do not age that well today at all.
Oh boy, you're not wrong. Yeah.
And it's like, wow, people used to speak like that. But we could jump into that later. Let's go ahead and keep going to number 2.
Oh man, here we go. Number 2, Female Trouble, 1974, by one of America's greatest filmmakers ever, John Waters. To me, John Waters, especially his early films, is about as punk rock as movies can get. And I mean, it's all about saying fuck you to the establishment, to government, to your parents, to just specifically to him, good taste. Like if you think you've got good taste in all the garish things that you buy, John Waters loves making fun of you. But this picture is really wild. It's about this character called Dawn Davenport, who goes from being a juvenile delinquent in her like 50s style high school to being, a totally crazed mass murderer on death row, and like her fashion career between there. And it's in this beautiful color, and there's a lot of screaming, and it's just a great, an outrageous time, and you're never going to see anything like an early John Waters picture.
This one intrigued me to no end because a couple other movies on here had powerful female leads. But the reason this one really intrigued me was because the trailer seems to put forward a female lead in a film during a day and age, and even to some extent still today in Hollywood, that most female leads are typecast to look like your stereotypical quote unquote perfect model. And this seems to go completely against that Hollywood trend.
Yeah, but actually, the lead in this film goes by the name of Divine, but Divine is actually a drag queen. So the lead of this film, well, the character is female, but the actor is actually male, playing Dawn Davenport.
Wow. So even going further against traditional Hollywood trends. And I'm glad you said that because I would have never known just by looking at this trailer. Man, that's intriguing as can be.
Yes, sir.
All right. And now coming in at number 1 as the best genre and exploitation movie.
Oh, man, this one, it's unlike anything. And I've said that a few times, but this one is truly outrageous, and it's unlike anything else, man. It's called Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. It's from 1965. To me, it's the king, the queen, and hell's the god of exploitation cinema. I don't care who you are. If anyone who has ever made their own exploitation film, whether you're John Waters or Frank Henenlotter, who made Basket Case, or Quentin Tarantino, everyone has stolen from this film, man. It is just the script is great. It's got a bunch of quotable one-liners, like someone calling someone else, you're like a velvet glove cast in iron, to describe their attitude, or the main character saying, I don't try, or excuse me, she says, I don't try anything, I just do it. There's just like a lot of these great campy one-liners in there, and it's full of bucks and babes and fast cars, and there's fights, and it switches gears from being like a car movie to being like a home invasion movie. Yeah, man, it's just loaded from top to bottom, and it is just defining what exploitation movies are.
Yeah, this trailer and the fact that this film came out in 1965. I mean, what can I say, my friend? Like, I had no idea that cinema was doing this in 1965.
Yeah. It's also a really strange movie because it's sort of marketed as like a sex movie, like in exploitation films. I didn't really talk about it here, but there's like a whole sex exploitation thing, which is about like you can go to the movie and see a pair of tits. But this movie starts like that, but it actually has no nudity in it, and it kind of lures you in to a movie about these women and how they feel about each other and how they feel about men, and like how it kind of like destroys them in their own sort of toxic female their own toxic femininity, but also it's also not really about that. So it's also about how the men affect them. And so how they're reacting to a male dominated world, all these things sort of like mixed into this movie that's also about fast cars and, ogling women.
Yeah, 1965. Like I said, I couldn't believe that such a film had come out so long ago, for sure.
Yeah.
And there you have the list. But now, as is our custom on any top 10 list we do, let's dig a little deeper. And first off, when I see this list and the descriptions and the dates, really, it's the dates that pop off to me, because there is nothing on this list that was made after 1982. But why is that? Why is it that you decided to discount or not consider or just gloss over the past 38 years of cinema? Is there really no other more recent film that would fit into your top 10 list of genre exploitation movie starter pack?
There definitely are movies more recent, I would say, that I could, yeah. But when I put this list together, I wanted to spotlight the golden age of genre and exploitation cinema, which really runs from like the 60s to the early 80s. There are good flicks out there by, Quentin Tarantino, who's probably now about as mainstream as you can get. But a lot of his roots come from this. But like there's other great directors like Anna Biller and Panos Cosmatos and Jan Gonzalez, who are making great movies today that definitely fit in these molds or are inspired by these movies. But to the point of like why I really didn't want to talk about anything later than that. It wasn't intentional that I stopped at 82, but that's kind of really where 82, 84 is where we're getting into the shift in what was really bankable movies. So like in the mid 80s, blockbusters and family movies really dominate the box office. And then even today, you could see like major studios and people who have the money are really not taking any risk anymore. And they're just eating up all the cinema screens like termites to get all their big tentpole pictures out there. So there's not a lot of room for these movies to really be in theaters. I mean, a lot of them are on streaming, which is great. Um, but a lot of these movies, not to say that exploitation films are gone, but I think something like the Fast and Furious franchise, it's kind of gone mainstream, right? So like, what's it exploiting? It's exploiting cars and muscle guys, and that's definitely exploitation cinema language. But now it's kind of gone to the mainstream, and I think anything that you can look at anything like The Rock is in, and you could see like he's in a movie that's like about a building burning or whatever, and he's got to get out. That's an exploitation movie right there. So a lot of these things have gone mainstream, but they're not as nasty and they're not as strange as they used to be. So yeah, I just kind of when starting this list, I just wanted to just get to the heart of like the golden age.
Yeah, I definitely see that. And especially whenever you first told me you wanted to do exploitation, honestly, I was not thinking what this list was. I was thinking, exploiting the box office. So making a movie to make $1 billion. So like Transformers or like a Marvel movie, or, filming a movie in China and doing Chinese product placement just to appeal to a Chinese audience because the Chinese box office has grown. International box office is where it's at for a lot of films. And, things like that. And I think you're right about exploitation does exist. And I think the Rock example is a good example. Fast and the Furious is a good example. But do you really think that Hollywood will ever see a return to cinema like the films on your list?
Not honestly, no, not like in a like they're going to rely on it as their sole business model. I mean, yeah, I think you could very well consider like superhero movies to be exploitation because they're exploiting one specific thing, and that's what the attraction is. But as far as like making these movies where there's not going to be a lot of oversights or there's not going to be care from the money guys, as far as like what people are putting in, because it used to be like producer, I'll give you $10,000 as long as you have a car chase at the beginning, a car chase at the end. You show some nudity in between. You can do whatever the hell you want after that. That stuff is gone. Like money guys want to know every single thing about a movie, and I say this as producers or like executives because it's more of a corporate system now. It's not so much these producers who are out there running movie studios who are actually interested in cinema than it is people who are running movie studios as like a corporation.
Yeah. Oh no, keep going.
No. Oh yeah. But I was going to say to answer your question about modern movies, I threw together a quick top 5 list. I'm not going to go into any detail on them, but real quick, 5 movies that modern movies that you should check out if you want to see a modern exploitation film: Mandy, The Love Witch, Knife and Heart, Let the Corpses Tan, and Climax. All made within the last, I want to say, 5 years, roughly. All great examples of like what a modern exploitation film looks like.
Oh, that's awesome. I know everyone loves a list inside of a list. I tend to do it sometimes myself. That's great. That's great. All right, let me ask you one final question, Gregory Day. So when I approached you about coming on to do a top 10 movie list about any kind of movie or film thing you wanted to do, why'd you choose this topic? We always ask at the end of our list, why are these lists important? So why is this list important to you?
I love movies, man. And, when I wanted to make a top 10 list of movies, I could say I could do any kind of list I want. I could talk about art films. I could talk about, Hong Kong films or whatever. But I want to talk about what I love, and exploitation and genre cinema kind of spans a lot of different things. And they're just fun movies, right? And fun in movies, I think now is something hard to come by. And I think a lot of things get too serious with whether it's talking about social issues or trying to adhere to, making everyone happy in a film, in the audience, making everyone who could possibly watch this movie happy with it, which kind of delineates from making a true blue fun movie, from the voices of the people who are making it. So with these films, they're just a blast to watch, because they don't really give a shit if they're going to offend anybody or if they're going to, not be marketable to certain things. They just want to make a movie that they think is going to be great. And it's the kind of films that, the creators want to see. So to me, it's the bottom line. These films got to be fun. And that's the kind of list I wanted to put together for your audience.
I love it, man. I love it. And talking about the audience, where can Lo-Fi listeners find you out there in the world?
Oh man, yeah. I am on Substack. So if you head to badday.substack.com. That's where you could find the Hipsville AD world, where I punch out essays about all types of cinema. So dropping today actually is my piece on The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward. It's going to be called The Kick Inside. It's an essay about the interior filmmaking of that film and how, like I mentioned earlier, how it explores its main character's sexuality and how the horror genre sort of like, one of the horror genre itself, but like sort of the thrill of being chased by a killer kind of turns her on, but it also repulses her. Her life is in danger, sort of in a BDSM sort of way. And then you can also find me on Instagram at Hipsville AD. And just head over to Substack and sign up for a newsletter, and you'll be in the know on all of my essays that drop. And then you can also, if you want to talk movies or you want to hit me up for any recommendations or you want to talk about this list or get anything else that you've seen all these, email me at hipsvillead@gmail.com.
Oh, that's excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. And I definitely would suggest to everyone out there to check out Gregory Day's work. He's doing some amazing stuff. And thank you again, my friend, for coming on. And hopefully you will come back again sometime to do another top 10 movie list with us.
Oh, yeah, man. Anytime.
And that, my friends, is this Tuesday's Top 10 list. Check us out tomorrow for that lo-fi global news fresh off that press. Back to business as usual. Always remember that Lofi Poli Sci is more than just me. It's the we that we be. Peace and well-being to all my human beings out there. Much love and always the best. Pickering and Day, signing off. Tell me something, Gregory Day. With cinemas coming back and movie theaters opening up again, what's your most anticipated film that you want to see in theaters in 2021?
Oh man, tough question. Yeah, because I typically don't go for a lot of the mainstream stuff, but also we're in a weird spot because there's a lot of things pushed back from last year, and there's not a lot of new stuff being made coming out in the theaters right now. We're gonna have to eventually catch back up. But for me right now, the only thing that I'm very excited about is the Candyman remake. The trailer just dropped. It looks amazing. I love the way that they have reimagined Candyman. It's always been something that I've been intrigued by, the sort of urban horror film. When I say urban, I don't mean it in any race-related way. I mean like something that takes place modern in the city. A lot of horror films don't really go that route anymore, but I love it. It just feels ultra modern, and it's something that we don't really have a lot of horror films that come out of our modern settings, new folklore. You know what I mean? So the new Candyman looks very intriguing to me.
Of course, you would choose a horror film, man. That old Candyman still haunts me.
I love it, man. Yeah, it's good.
I ain't watching that new one. As if, please. I want to get back into good films. I don't want to go back and get scared. Come on.